This is the Passive 25K podcast, a podcast built around the vision of creating wealth through passive income for ourselves and others. The idea of creating income while you sleep seems like a dream come true, but for most professionals, turning this into a reality is a different story. On this show, you will hear real people breaking passive income streams down to the basics, giving you the next steps to start your own passive income journey. If you're new to the show, my name is Kyle Reedstrom from Fargo, North Dakota, where I get to work with my team of agents and investors each day to complete our goal of $25,000 a month in passive income. Now, let's get right into our next conversation. Hello and welcome to the Passive 25K podcast with Kyle Reedstrom. Today's episode number 5, we are cracking the code on short-term rentals with Noah Ford Dunker. Noah, how you doing, man?
I'm great, Kyle. How are you?
Thanks for being here, man. We're glad to have you. I'm going to do a little bio so our audience knows who they're talking to. Noah Ford Dunker is a Fargo native and graduated from Concordia College in Moorhead. He currently runs digital marketing for Eide Bailly, one of the top accounting and consulting firms in the country. When he's not implementing strategies for SEO, paid Google ads, or other digital marketing endeavors, Noah dives headfirst into the world of property management and rental market analysis through Airbnb short-term rentals. Noah owns and operates Sylvester, a short-term rental management and consulting company. A master of digital marketing and the king of the side hustle. I like that, Noah. Noah shares his knowledge with just about everyone, whether it's over a beer at one of his favorite local breweries or at speaking engagements as a featured guest. Noah, we are super pumped to have you, man. The topic matter at hand, obviously your forte is in that marketing side, but you've crawled into this short-term rental space and specifically in management. Tell me how you found yourself in this role or this side hustle, as you called it in your bio.
Yeah, sure. Honestly, it was kind of an accident. I kind of just stumbled into it. I was living in an apartment in Fargo and going on vacation for a couple weeks. This was back in 2017, 2016. And I was like, what if I put my apartment on Airbnb to help pay for gas money? That was my goal. I was like, if I could make $100, that'd be great. I ended up paying for my rent and all my gas money for that trip. And so I was like, this is bigger than I thought it was. Let's maybe try it again. And it's I had a girlfriend at the time that I would just go stay with if I booked it. And then I ended up making double my rent every month. And that lasted a few months before my landlord found out. So
yes. Dude. Okay. Noah, this has a term in real estate. This is called arbitrage, right? Rental arbitrage?
Yeah. Yep. Rental arbitrage would be when you rent available apartments and then list them on Airbnb or VRBO and make a profit. It's not super profitable to do in the Fargo area. I would say you got to really find a cheap apartment if you want to make that work. But there's places around the country where you can make bank doing that.
No kidding. And I love this concept, because it got you into, it kind of gave you the itch, right? But then this is a zero money down, kind of tactical, cerebral way to create cash flow and solve a problem for people that are looking for a place to stay short term. I think it's this crazy little, can I call it a glitch in the system? Landlords don't really know about it, but it's hey, multiple people are staying. It's an interesting thing that you stumbled on it based on this topic matter, arbitrage. I love it.
Yeah. The other thing about that is that you have to find landlords that are willing to work with you. I wouldn't recommend going the route of just doing it and hoping nobody finds out, because they will find out.
Yes.
Eventually, but you can find landlords that are open to it. And I've found a couple here in town, and you just have to basically come up with a message to pitch your idea and send it to every landlord you can find until you find one or two that'll do it.
Okay. And so when you did it, it just made sense. It made sense financially. Why not? I'm not staying there. Let's pay for some gas money. and then it worked and it worked. And you said you doubled, you were not only paying your rent, you were doubling, you're making excess.
Yep.
Was there a big backlash from the landlord? Was it a big deal, or was he just like, hey, no, stop doing that, man?
She was mostly just like, hey, stop doing that. But she's also like, can I buy you lunch? I'm curious about what it is you're doing. And so at the end of the day, I pitched her I was like, hey, you have X number of units. I'll rent all of them on a 2-year lease if you let me do Airbnb in them. She owned businesses like around there that the guests would spend money at. And so while I was doing it without her knowledge, I kept track of every penny that guests spent at her businesses, because I just sent them a questionnaire afterwards, and I kept a spreadsheet, and I was like, she'll find out one day. And when she does, here's a spreadsheet of all the money that my guests spent at your other businesses, plus I paid rent. So,
wow, dude.
Yeah.
Congrats. That's like clap worthy on that, man. So you were kind of hedging your bet on this thing, but she had an entrepreneurial mindset. She was curious about it. So did you strike that deal? Did you get her to let you rent them all out and do this, or did that kind of fizzle out?
We did not. It kind of fizzled out. Basically, other people in her business partnership weren't open to the idea of short-term rental, which honestly, that's usually what happens when I approach people. Is they'll be like, huh, interesting, I'm curious. And then somebody will shut it down, because just landlords who have been landlords for a long time know long-term rentals, and that's what they know. And changing from that is scary. And so a lot of people just are not open to that idea. But if you can find an open-minded person, that's clutch.
Man, kudos to you for making a win-win solution, though. I mean, I want the audience to hear what you did, to think creatively, on putting together the win of you knew she owned businesses, and you knew that your guests were supporting those businesses, aka the ecosystem was thriving all around. It could be a win for her, and it's obviously a win for you. Man, I just that stinks that she didn't take that win-win, because that's, for a landlord, that's 100% occupancy. That's You're going to do it as long as it works. That could be you could be still doing it to this day. You could have just kept the whole building full on their end. But I suppose there's a little juice they're not getting to squeeze. So maybe there's some thoughts there. But
I think there was some weird ideas about somebody making money off of like their asset, that they weren't making all of that money. So I don't know. Every time I see her, which is like every couple of years, I just remind her. I was like, hey, anytime you're ready, I'll rent all your apartments. I'll pay you above what you're charging, honestly. Which that's probably another area, if you want to get in the door, people like hearing that you'll pay them more than they're currently renting for. And so that might open a few more doors if you're willing to do that, if the market has a fit for that.
That's cool. And so, I mean, we're talking about this space of short-term rentals. It's a scary fog that a lot of real estate investors are avoiding, or not checking out, or they're kind of like, I don't know. You said it best, Noah. You said they know long-term rentals, and so they stick to what they know. However, these are generally like business owners, entrepreneurs, open-minded style people. It's funny to hear that there's resistance to this new thing. Have you seen that in this industry of short-term rentals?
Yeah, absolutely. I see it more so in like people who are landlords who own a bunch of like multi-unit buildings. They're typically more scared. The people that I find to be the most open, honestly, are real estate agents, or real estate companies who own single family houses or smaller multi-unit places, just because they're usually more entrepreneurial. They're more open to, hey, how can I make the most money off of this asset that I have? I don't care how I do it. I just want to make X% return.
So that makes sense, man. That makes sense. And it's even kind of twisting my brain up thinking about it. But let's just do a quick little walkthrough, because I want to pick your brain on this. Let's say we have a 24-plex, okay? And this thing is in a generally good location, access to, let's call it say this thing's up near, North Fargo somewhere. So it's got access to some of the downtown amenities okay? They're going to go get they're all 2 bedrooms. They're all going to go get long-term leases on all these units, 24 of them, for $1,000 a month on these 2
Yep.
bedrooms. You're saying that with what we have and the opportunity, possibly, you could do way better than that, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The average per month revenue for a place in Fargo is $1,650 for a short-term rental. So you're making an extra $650. Granted, there is other overhead. There's cleaning fees that are going to eat into that. But again, that $1,650 is the average. I think depending on the location, it could be more than that, could be less than that. Closer to downtown, the better. NDSU is the next biggest hub. And then I don't personally manage any that are down close to the new Sanford, but I know that that's another good spot.
Okay. Sanford Hospital. Okay. So you're saying, the average I'm hearing is over 50% higher than the long-term rents that they're getting. Yes, there's other expenses, so we can't do the direct apples to apples, but that's mind blowing, man. That covers up so many ills, and that would be multiplied by 24.
Yep.
This is interesting, man. Is this what got you when you started going down this path? You were like, wait, this is kind of a new thing that I think nobody's really doing. Did that kind of fan the flame?
A little bit. I honestly got into it prior to knowing any of these numbers. I was approached by a realtor in town who had properties on Airbnb and said, hey, I'm sick of managing these. I don't want to deal with guests and hiring cleaners. It's just it's a nightmare for me. I want to be hands off and get a check. And I was like, cool, let me help you. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, I'll charge you X percentage a month. And he was like, cool, sounds good. And so I just take a percentage of the top line revenue. It worked out well. The guy had more properties. He said, let's try, I've got this 10-plex. Let's try 5 of those and see how it does on Airbnb versus they had been long-term rentals for years. I think we usually make double what his long-term rental rates were every month on those 5. And now every time a lease tenant moves out, we flip it into an Airbnb.
Wow.
I think there's one long-term person left in that building who probably hates me, but
trying for some peace and quiet and has new people coming through every weekend, right?
Yeah, they're not loud people.
Yes,
we don't get noise complaints, so that's great.
Man, that's interesting to just follow the numbers because it's just natural. The way you even say how there's, hey, let's try 5. If it didn't work, what would you do? You'd turn it back to how it was. But I just love stretching it out, saying, hey, we're going to look into this new thing. There's potential here. And then you're saying, hey, I think there's potential. I can manage them. That's really cool. What, others, how much do you run into other, regulation with this? It's generally kind of the Wild West right now, right? You can kind of do it, keep it, as long as we're not causing trouble and there's not a bunch of commotion, like you say, noise complaints, things like that. This isn't really regulated for where we're at, but other markets, I think, right?
Yeah, Fargo is a fairly low regulation. We do get charged lodging tax, so the same tax that hotels get charged, that's collected and remitted by Airbnb on our behalf. So that's nice. If you are renting on Vrbo or booking.com, you have to do that yourself, which is an extra added headache, but there's software out there to help you do that.
What's that look like, Noah? What's lodging tax? I've never heard of that, actually.
Yeah, so I don't actually know what percentage is off the top of my head. I think it's 1.5% or something like that, maybe 3%.
Okay.
And that lodging tax basically goes to the visitors bureau that they then use to try to get more people to come here.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's a tourism thing.
Okay. And then, I mean, as far as other stuff with like, again, this is new. It's scary for some. I could see some like city administrators, whatever, like, or even getting a couple of loud voices that want to shut it down. I mean, I can think of hotel owners, like that would start to make noise about it. Have you seen any of that, or is this just kind of still too new?
I personally have not seen any of that here in Fargo. I will say that I think like the Airbnb traveler and the hotel traveler are different 70 to 80% of the time. Just in that people traveling Airbnb or short-term rental are looking for, they want to have a kitchen, they want to have laundry that they can do. They want to be able to cook, stuff like that, which is not what people getting a hotel typically are looking for.
That's right.
I mean, there are those hotel places like my place or whatever that do like furnished apartments basically.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to that, Airbnb is usually significantly cheaper in the long run. Because I mean, that's going to run you probably 130, 150 bucks a night. And you can get an Airbnb with 2 bedrooms and a kitchen in town for $70. So,
wow, that's such a good point. I hope that nugget, there's a nugget there. The Airbnb traveler and the hotel traveler are different. These two industries are not in direct competition. They are serving different demographics, different markets. And I agree. I mean, people with pets, people that want a fence, people that want to park a car in a garage sometimes,
Yep. Yeah. I will say, I think right now, like on the spectrum of places to stay, they're not super close, but they are moving closer together. Because you're seeing companies like Sonder or Front Desk. Those are companies that basically buy up whole floors or entire apartment buildings and turn them into Airbnbs in places like Minneapolis, New York, Chicago, stuff like that. Wow. And they'll sign like a 10-year lease or something like that on an entire floor. And those function a lot more like hotels without a front desk.
Gotcha.
So everything is very automated, very crisp and clean, all white linens, I don't know. It's a little bit more sterile than what people expect when they are thinking about Airbnb. At least right now. I think that expectation is shifting. But there's companies like that are pulling those two things closer together.
I got to do a plug for the Airbnb brand and the marketing they've been doing via commercials, because we've been watching, my wife and I have been watching some NCAA basketball, and they'll have these amazing visually appealing Airbnb commercials of these experiences and these like family members, making meals and doing arts and crafts and game night at the table. It's just an interesting, that is much different than the sterile hotel stay that you described, so it's almost like, you want to keep it that way, but as you said, Noah, they are probably crawling closer towards each other just because of commercialization, I suppose.
Yep. Yeah, they definitely found like the perfect examples for those commercials, and those exist. A huge chunk of Airbnb is like that super cool cabin on the Maine coast where you can take your whole family for the weekend and it's perfect. But I would say the bulk of their listings are like not full houses, they're apartments, they're in larger cities. But if you were to break that down then by revenue, that those more unique places are making way more like per active listing than an apartment building. Gotcha. So there's pros and cons to both.
That makes sense. And I want to dive into that. As far as like, you're the inside expert on this, you see the other side of it. And what type of units would you say, like, what's the perfect style? You just talked about that coastal unique character cabin versus, let's just call it the 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Fargo, or let's call it the twin home house near a concert venue in South Moorhead, Yeah, I'm maybe stretching on these types, but I just want to figure out like what's the best type to have.
Yeah. I think in town here, there's two types that I would, well, maybe three. One of them is proximity to downtown. So apartments, the more people can sleep, the better. I think the two of the highest grossing ones downtown are 4-bedroom apartments that are either like on a major downtown street or within easy walking distance. Those two are both bringing in over 75 grand a year. The other big one is a full house that's not necessarily in downtown, but close enough. And I know there's a couple that I manage, one in Moorhead between downtown and Concordia, and then we got one in Prairie Wood by the golf course, on the golf course in Fargo, that both fit 12 to 16 people. They have a hot tub. They have like an entertaining area. Those we see make quite a bit of money as well. And that's more weekend traffic. So during the week, those are usually empty. And we'll get weekend traffic for $500, $600 a night on those ones.
Interesting. Okay. So yeah, those two sectors again, where you're right there, you're in the heat of it, and you're doing quicker stays. Maybe you're more occupied for the course of the month. But then these bigger houses that aren't necessarily out in the boondocks are still they maybe just get the weekend bookings, but they're high nightly rates. It's kind of two different worlds.
Yep. Yeah. So if you can't be close to downtown, then you want to have good amenities like a hot tub or a pool. There's a couple places in town that have a private pool in their house that do very, very well.
Gotcha. And I wanted to get into that, Noah, too. Like, how do you attract these people in? Because now you have the option to change things, like you say, hot tub, pool. Are there anything else on that list of like how you could get higher bookings, higher nightly rents even?
Yeah, the one that I've seen is hot tub, by far. People will book a place just because it has a hot tub. That said, I hate managing properties that have hot tubs because it's a headache. Because no matter what you do, something will go wrong. Guests will splash a bunch of water out and it won't heat up properly. They won't forget to put the chemicals in. They won't shower before using it, all kinds of stuff. And so it's a big headache to maintain it. And so if that is the route you want to go, I highly recommend hiring somebody like FM Pools and Spas to do like a weekly or bi-weekly like cleanup, essentially, where they come in and test all the chemicals, make sure the water's good. Just because I don't trust guests to do that. We ask them to, but I have zero faith in most people. So
that's fair. You're in the management game. You have to have low expectations, right? Right, yep. Noah? Okay, that's really helpful. Hot tub's a huge piece. What about other amenities like bikes? Like what have I seen? I mean, when I've been closer to like lakes and beaches, you get the beach toys and boards and things like that. Are there some other things or is it all just kind of play and to each their own?
It's a little bit of to each their own. I guess I will say I hear requests for like a grill pretty frequently, like a gas grill. And we have those at a lot of places. Always have a backup propane tank because no matter what you do, you'll run out of propane like right when the party's starting. At lake places, having like water stuff, absolutely. And I guess like things like paddle boards or kayaks. We manage one that has like a full-on pontoon boat as part of the listing. And that like doubles or triples the price of the nightly stay in the summer. If you have a way to sort of separate out those costs, that's probably better because not everybody wants that boat.
Yeah.
And that will help fill in your calendar for sure. I've just last week got a request for bikes. They said, do you know anybody that rents bikes? And honestly, there's like one place in town that rents bikes, and it's, I don't know, it seems weird to me. Bikes are not their specialty.
Yeah.
They rent other stuff. And so I've thought about it. I was like, well, if I bought a bike for $1,000 and I rent it out for $25 a day, you make that back in the summer easily.
No
and
kidding, man.
What's the lifetime value of that bike that you're spending $1,000 on? So we'll see. Maybe I'll start offering bikes.
There you go. You're just solving problems. The true entrepreneur. I like it. Well, okay. I love this, man. You're just dropping little bits of wisdom all over. I appreciate that. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I'm excited to talk about my place, the place you've been managing for my wife and I. We call it Rosie's Place because our daughter's name's Rosie. And I just want to kind of, that's something that obviously I've seen some of it, but very novice still. And I just want to get, some of the things we're doing and your take on some of that. So I'll be excited to talk to you about that. So we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back to talk more about cracking the code on the short-term rentals with Noah Ford Dunker. Hey, wanted to take a quick break from this week's episode. Wondering if you ever ask yourself, how do I get started in this stuff? Or if I'm already doing it, what are some next steps or people that are doing the same thing that I want to do, people on this passive income journey? Well, we were getting that question and we created a community of passive income investors called Passive Income University. This is a place where you can watch videos, things that we've done, where we put tools and information, where we've built a community of people that can communicate, ask questions, and grow together to start their passive income journey. And eventually we complete our passive income journey together. If you're interested in more info on Passive Income University, check us out at p25kg.com. Okay, we are back with Noah Ford Dunker talking about cracking the code on short-term rentals. Okay, Noah, the second half here, I want to get into Rosie's Place, which my wife and I turned into an Airbnb this last fall of 21. And as you know, just to inform the audience here, this is a Rambler style 1950s house. It's kind of dated. It has 4 bedrooms, has a 1-stall garage, and it's pretty close to the college in Fargo, NDSU. Generally speaking, this would be a plug and play long-term rental. This would just be a college rental, and it would probably rent in the world of $1,800 a month. Okay. Well, we decided to go down this kind of, like I said, this foggy Airbnb, VRBO, short-term rental path. And that's how we got connected with Noah, who's been doing an awesome job managing it. And I'm just like, I want to toss it your way first, Noah, on what do you think about this place? Like, this is just kind of a normal house. We did some beautification, some curb appeal. But like, what's the goods and the bads of this place? And be honest with me, man. I'd love to just kind of hear your take on like the positives and negatives.
Yeah, sure. It's mostly positives, if we're being honest. It's in a great location. It's got a good number of bedrooms and bathrooms to accommodate the number of bedrooms, which is great. Garage is a plus. The backyard is a plus. You can put a grill out there. You can put a hot tub if you wanted to.
Now I know you don't like to manage hot tubs, Noah, so I'm just going to save you on that one.
I'll do it. We'll make more money if there's a hot tub. So I'm not opposed to it. It's just can be a headache.
That's fair.
Things that I probably could be better is like the kitchen and dining part of it, because there's not a dining room big enough to fit everybody that can sleep there. And so you got to be okay with sitting around the couch or eating at the kitchen counter, which is fine. I don't remember the last time that I ate a meal at my dining room table. So I'm the target market for that. I'm all about eating at coffee tables or desks or wherever. So that's an area that like could be better. And there's not really anything you can do about it in that space. Yes. There's not a dining room. So unless you wanted to change that living room on the main floor into a dining room, you could, but I think people would rather have a sitting area with a TV. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good notes. And I'll just little things you think of with short term that long term you don't really have to, people furnish it themselves. So when you get into the furnishing game, it's interesting. Noah, I don't know how much information you get on this, so just share what you can on like what's the reason people are booking this? Because we've been doing it for about 3 months now. I mean, it's a mixed bag, but I'm always curious why people are booking this. This is in North Fargo. There's stuff going on. Any insight there?
yeah, honestly, of the people who have booked so far, I know that we've had people in town for concerts. The Elton John concert was a big one. There were no hotels or Airbnbs available the night that he was in town because they were all booked. So that's a huge one. And your house is walking distance to the Fargo Dome in the right weather.
Yes.
Or a $5 Uber.
There you go.
So that really helps. Other things would be NDSU. Fargo Marathon brings in a lot of people. I think that I don't hear from everybody why they come to Fargo. I do ask, like when they book, I was like, hey, what brings you to Fargo? Send me a message. And almost nobody fills that out. So I don't know. I maybe have a better call to action on that ask, but graduation, I believe, is already booked out at that place. And so it's just a lot people coming to town for the weekend. We get a lot of tourism, for lack of a better word, from places like Winnipeg, Minneapolis, Bismarck, people coming to Fargo because they've never been to Fargo. They've never been to North Dakota, just to check it out. People coming to shop. We get Canadians coming down because we have a better tax rate here. So if they're shopping and buying something big, it's better to do it here than in Winnipeg. So in a typical year, I would say 20-ish% of our traffic is people from Winnipeg. Just
really
coming down to Fargo. Yeah, it's not been that way for the last 2 years because the border has been closed or hard to get across. But pre-COVID, that's what we saw.
Now the push is back. That's really interesting to hear. We got to start catering to the Canadians. What do we got to do? Start putting the flag on the wall or something.
Yeah, there you go. But it's a lot of either families or groups, like a bachelorette party or a girls' weekend or a guys' weekend. They'll come and hang out. It's nice to have like a pad to hang out versus getting a block of hotel rooms that may or may not be near each other.
Correct.
And it's way cheaper to rent a house for $300 a night than to spend $150 each on 4 hotel rooms. So
yeah, which the win-win there is, it's awesome. Is the $300 a night. You're like, yeah, of course. But then it's a bigger place. It does have the 4 bedrooms, can sleep quite a few. That's so interesting to hear the different reasons, and it all ends up making sense. And then now to even think Fargo has a tourist aspect because there's just amenities. You're not going to go and look at the beautiful mountains or lakes or river. Is not necessarily a tourist attraction, but we are an epicenter in our area. And for other areas like that in, other parts of the country, it's just interesting to think about demand that you wouldn't necessarily expect Fargo as a tourism spot, especially for Canadians. You got to love it. But we've been doing this thing for 3 months. And just to kind of walk the audience through some stats, because I love this. The one thing I want to get to before that is you opened my eyes to what's called dynamic pricing for Airbnbs. I never knew this was a thing. Coming into this blind, I was thinking, we set a nightly rate, and if it's not booking out, I suppose we lower it. And if we're doing pretty good, you crank it up. And it's pretty archaic thinking. What is dynamic pricing, and has that always been part of this game? That was kind of a cool eye opener.
Yeah. So dynamic pricing basically is pricing that adjusts based on supply and demand, and other market factors like, is Elton John here tonight?
Yes.
Is there an NDSU Bison football game tonight? Stuff like that, which affects supply and demand. So it's mostly supply and demand, but the software that we use can notice spikes before Airbnb does. Airbnb also has what they call smart pricing, which I don't recommend anybody use it because it's terrible. They are incentivized to have the most number of people booking. And so they're incentivized by the customer, not by their sellers like us. And so they want people in the house no matter what it costs. So they don't raise prices essentially.
Gotcha. Okay.
Whereas
so outsource that outside the site. That's a good tip.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, we use a company called Price Labs, I think is what it's called. Yeah. There's other companies out there that do the same thing. And they basically just charge a fee per listing per month for you to use their dynamic pricing software. But
yeah, and I mean, it is very effective from my experience. Like we're just to walk through some of, I think we started calling this 4-bedroom house near NDSU, we'd go right under $200 a night. In fact, I remember us texting saying, hey, what are you thinking for a nightly price? And we said that. In every single month, the average nightly has been higher than that. Just to walk through these stats. And Noah's connected me with the back end of this through an app called Guesty, which is kind of neat for Noah's managing, and my wife and I can see the bookings through this app. So in February, we had 11 nights out of the month booked for an average nightly rate of $202. Okay, so and that's February in Fargo, folks. So low expectations there. And so that was a 39%. March actually penciled in at 12 nights and same percentage, 39%. And that was at a nightly rate of $223 a night. So better revenue, same occupancy. And now in April, we have 43% occupancy. It's only the 4th of the month. We have 13 nights booked. Our average nightly rate is $253. And then the crazy one is when I look at May, and you mentioned the marathon and some of these things, there's 5 nights booked in May already, and the average nightly rate is $360 a night. That just blew my mind, man. Can you explain, does this all make sense to you, or is it kind of like, whoa, this is interesting?
No, that makes total sense to me. So historically, the worst months of the year in Fargo are January through March. That's when we're going to see the lowest occupancy rate, the lowest average nightly rate. And so bummer that we launched in the worst months, but it'll give you good perspective then when we see that spike up. And you'll know what to expect more next year too. Granted, 11 nights a month, we should be able to do better than that. I would say we can probably get over the 50% mark. But if we're making $360 a night, we don't necessarily need to.
That's the big aha.
There's a balance.
You're exactly right.
Yep.
I mean, I was totally like February. I mean, when we had 11 nights booked in February at over 200, just for perspective, remember you guys, I said that this place would normally rent for $1,800 a month as a long term. February 202 times 11, that's going to pencil out over 2,000. In March, those numbers, 12 nights at $223 a night, was over $2,600 that month, where this would normally be at $1,800. I know I'm being redundant, but April 13 at $253. Okay, let's do some quick math here with my beautiful calculator on my phone. 253 times 13, that's almost $3,300. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh yay, this property's awesome. I'm saying like this is kind of surprising to me. I remember when you told me the projections that the place could possibly do, and now we're seeing it in April here. And yes, there's more expenses, there's management, there's things like that. But I mean, these percentages outweigh that. And this is maybe something you're used to, but I tell you what, long-term real estate investors are not used to seeing a 3 on a monthly income number. So
Yeah, it is surprising to most people, especially in Fargo.
yeah, and I mean the long term versus short term debate is it's interesting. And I guess I want to kind of dive into a little bit of the stats on it, Noah, because that always
Mhm.
helps people guide people. So generally speaking, you had mentioned the average nightly at a 1650. That was for like a 2-bedroom, you said, or is that just the average general?
That's just the average for Fargo. I think
Or
I can pull up.
that was a monthly. Sorry, that was a monthly.
Yeah, monthly. Closer to 1,700 actually.
Okay, okay, and
I
that's
did
the
say
whole
1,650.
range. That's the whole range of everything. What about like
Yep.
occupancy? What can somebody expect in a general sense if they're looking at a property, like rough occupancy?
Yeah. So market average for Fargo is 66%. With
66.
Yep. Yeah, which is why I think we can do better than 11 nights a month booked. Um,
Yeah, yeah, no
with
kidding.
the
As
highest
far
occupancy in July at 88% and the lowest in January at 51.
No kidding. The lowest is just over 50%. I ran some
Yep.
Airbnb numbers before I had this experience. And every number I ran, I was at like 40%, 45. And of course I was trying to be conservative, but these stats just yeah, I'm crippling any analysis if I'm not
Yeah.
using the right stats right here. Yeah.
So if we look at just 4-bedroom places, then it's not going to change the number. Never mind. I can't tell you.
Okay. You're getting me excited there. But yeah, you
Yeah,
can kind of
sorry.
do some analytics back there. I mean, like,
Yep.
would you said there's 2 categories. You said there's kind of smaller, better location, and then there's bigger bigger houses, right? Like that's what you were kind of going towards. I mean, let's use this as an example. Let's say somebody, if you can run the stats, Noah, entertain me here. Let's say
Yep.
somebody owns a 3-bedroom house, and let's say that they are gone a lot, or they have other things they're doing in the summer, and they want to kind of do the true Airbnb, which is they actually live in the house and then they leave when they book it. What could somebody expect for something like that?
Yeah. For a 3-bedroom house in Fargo, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
probably like 30 to 40 grand. That would be my guess in a year. And that is going to depend a lot on like where it is, how often they're not in town,
Yes, of
um,
course. How
stuff
much they
stuff
keep
like
it
that.
available.
Yeah, and I do work with people who just like own a condo and they're here half the year randomly and gone half the year, and so why not pay for the whole condo while they're not here?
Man, that pays for a mortgage, folks. Those numbers pay for a mortgage, and that is a crazy thing. And especially in a time when people are looking for more lifestyle, they can work remote. They're looking for experience, and that's kind of the motivation. I just think these stats are incredible. So, I mean, I could probably talk about them the whole time, but I want to continue to move, and I really appreciate you sharing that insight, man. This is fun to talk to somebody that's on that side of things. Um, how about like a story? Noah, you're on the management side of things. I'd love to hear, like, do you have any like a really cool win story or any story for a guest that came to Fargo and you kind of had some kind of proximity to why they were here or what they did? And then also, I always like asking managers in real estate if they have kind of a tougher story that was kind of like we didn't like that one so much. And again, use your discretion, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I mean, some of the cooler stories, we have had like bands that are playing in town rent out the full house for their band to stay at. Um, so they're just here for a night or two, but rather than like staying on their tour bus if they have one, or getting a bunch of hotels, they'll rent out a whole house, and that way they can relax more. I think it feels more like
Yeah.
home, unless like they're on the road essentially. And so we've seen a couple bands do that. Um, Obviously, people like Elton John are not doing that, but
Yeah.
it's some of the more like local Midwest touring groups will do stuff like that. Um, Plus, it saves them money. So
Yeah.
people that care about that. Negatives. I mean, once or twice a year, there's people that will throw a big party at one of our places. And we do everything we can to try to minimize that. We use security cameras, smart locks. We have noise, like decibel monitoring devices in potential party pads that will track spikes in decibels. They have like motion sensors, so it sees how many people are coming in, tracks how many devices are connected to the Wi-Fi or emitting Bluetooth signal nearby.
Wow.
And so we can proactively jump on stuff like that because we have a no party like policy, and if you throw a party, we're going to charge you a chunk of money and take it out of your deposit. So we try to minimize that, but there's people who just don't care, and so they'll, no matter what you do, there's going to be a party at some point that is no fun. But that's why we have things like insurance. And Airbnb has an insurance policy on you as well. So in the instances where we have had parties, Airbnb has covered the majority of the expenses that were associated with that. They don't always cover everything. And it's a headache to try to get them to cover stuff. And there's a lot of companies out there that will sell you supplemental short-term rental insurance if you want it, where you basically pay on a per booking fee. And so you can pay, let's just say like $50 to $60 per booking. And that will then cover up to $10,000 in damages, essentially. But you're only going to use that a couple times a year. And so do the math. Yeah. Would it be better to just put $50, $60 into a rainy day fund or whatever, emergency fund, and just pay it out of pocket rather than pay that insurance? That's up to you.
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, that makes
people
sense.
Throw parties.
I think of when we stay at Airbnbs, or the Airbnbs I've had, you think of like the bachelor party or the bachelorette, or, there's people coming to town for a family reunion and everybody gathers, and, sometimes it's before they go and do all that. But yes, that's got to happen sometimes at bigger houses, especially. That makes total sense.
Yep.
We've
had people bring in their own DJ and light system and like throw an absolute rager.
That is next level. That is throwing a concert. Yeah. Yes.
That is.
Okay, that's intentional. They had no plans not to do that.
Yeah, 100% correct.
Oh, that's good. That's a good story. Hey, I appreciate you sharing that. One thing that popped in my head was, you had mentioned kind of where consumers are booking from. You put it on multiple platforms, right? With VRBO, Airbnb being the big ones. Are there other places that you put it all over? Or?
Yeah, so we list on Airbnb, VRBO, Booking.com, and TripAdvisor, which I don't even know they did rentals until recently. But the property management system that we use, Guesty, that gives you that dashboard you can log into, we basically maintain the listings in one spot, and it acts as a channel. There's a word for it. Basically, they distribute it for you. Yeah. And so we maintain one listing, and they push that info out into the different channels.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
And so we just have to update, like if we take new pictures or if you paint the house, we update that in one spot and it pushes it to all the places that we have that listing.
Gotcha. Okay. Where are you? So you don't necessarily know where people are coming from the most. Is it like 50%?
It's 90 to 100% Airbnb.
Oh, wow.
Depending
just
on the
dominates
property.
It.
Yeah. Okay. Airbnb dominates it. I will say there has been an uptick in VRBO and Booking.com. Just because, I don't know if you watched the Super Bowl, but they both kind of launched their brand campaigns around that time. And they both have $4 billion ad buys for the next year, which is about 4 times, I think, what Airbnb is spending on marketing.
Oh,
and so they are aiming for Airbnb. Airbnb has been the king for a while. VRBO actually predates them. They've been around for a lot longer.
Hmm.
But they were very much like rent a villa on the south coast of Spain,
Yeah.
like vacation, not my kind of vacation, not like the everyman's vacation, but more on the bougier side. And so they're definitely trying to compete now with Airbnb for those nightly 2-bedroom apartment bookings and spending a lot of money to do that. So, I mean, I recommend being on all the platforms, but Airbnb for sure.
Gotcha. Well, Noah, I want to ask you a final piece here for I want to ask you for advice for people out there that are considering this strategy, whether it's their own house or an investment property. I want to ask you for the number 2 advice, because number 1 is that they should call you and let you manage their Airbnb for them. But number 2, if they were going to manage something or get into this, what advice would you have other than the many things you've already told us? Like maybe condense it into kind of some wisdom for our audience.
Yeah. So, of course, I'd rather you called me and I'll do it for you. Sometimes that doesn't make sense if it's just like your own house and it's just one property that you want. You can totally do that on your own. Things that I recommend would be like using dynamic pricing tools, using tools to push your listing to more than just Airbnb. And then automate as much as possible. So automate messaging to guests, automate things like door codes, put smart locks on every door, and you can automate that easily so that if somebody books it, they get texted a door code that's unique to them, that is active from their check-in time and deletes itself when they check out. So they can't be checking in early or staying later. Stuff like that. Have a good cleaner is very important. Whether you want to do it yourself, some people do that, where they clean after every booking. I don't like cleaning, so I hire people to do that. I think the majority of people don't like cleaning. And so,
and some people might think they're a good cleaner, but they're not a professional.
yeah. And I've had to deal with that too, where people thought they were doing a good enough job. And I have to basically tell them, nope, you can't be the person responsible for this. I will hire someone to do a better job, because when I'm working with people, it's my name and reputation on the line, not the owner of that property. And so if something's not clean, that comes back on me, not the person who cleaned it.
Yeah, dude, that's really good tips. And that's, it's the hospitality world. It's a different game than just a long-term rental. So, man, I feel like this was packed with value. Noah, for people that are listening and that are curious and their minds sparking ideas and interest, where can they find you to interact, to ask questions? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can easily find me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Just search for Noah Ford Dunker. There's only one of them, so I should be the only one that pops up. Perks of having a weird last name. So you can find me that way. You can shoot me an email at noah@sylvester.com. And I think we'll put that in the show notes, maybe. I don't know how you do things.
That's right. Good plug there, Noah. You did it perfect.
Yep, great. And I think I've got a website and social media platforms as well. So we'll link to those if you want to.
Yes. And as Noah said, all of that will be in the show notes for the audience to interact, to follow up. Man, I literally have a page of notes after I made a page of notes for this conversation. So no, this was really fun to talk to you about this. It's a new place for real estate investors to consider. And I think that this information that you provided is just going to help people thrive and hopefully continue to create passive income, which we're all about on the Passive 25K podcast. Thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate the time. This has been the Passive 25K podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future conversations. Also, tell us what you thought by leaving a comment below on today's topic. If something really hit with you, don't be afraid to share this with someone else that's interested in passive income. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll catch you next time for another episode of the Passive 25K podcast.